have a brand new journal. Do you ever get a new journal and it's just so gorgeous and so lush that you're terrified of using it? That you're terrified of ruining it? I mean, look at this. It's got beautiful handmade papers. I mean, just gorgeous. But if you do have something like this in your stash, some crafty goodie that you're too scared to use because you don't want to ruin it, I promise you, it is far more of a waste to not use it than to use it. So please do use your craft supplies. So today we are going to be brave. We are going to start this journal, and yeah, I can't wait. Let's just get started. I have more journals in my stash than I would care to admit, but I have nothing like this. As such, I'm quite nervous about getting started in this journal. I don't have anything with these sort of handmade papers, and although I'm familiar with a large number of mediums, I'm not sure how they're going to respond on this paper. So before I sort of start playing in earnest, I decided to do some swatching. Gotta love a bit of swatching. I do like doing it. So what I've done is I painted half the page with a clear transparent gesso, and I've left half the page untreated, and I'm just going to play with various mediums on that just to sort of get a little idea of how they feel and how they work on this particular paper. So I start off with some watercolour, also watercolour adding lots of water to see how it would bleed out and how it would work putting multiple colours together. I then do the same thing with pencils. And actually the page responds really well to pencils, I think because of the tooth that it has, which is cool. So I do the same with pencils on treated and untreated, and continue to do this with a variety of mediums. So I would highly recommend doing this if you're unsure of the paper. I know that in the past I've bought journals and then been like, oh, that's not gone as I expected, and so possibly taking the time to do this just gives you a bit more confidence when starting the page. So I also try alcohol markers and acrylic markers as well. Okay, so initial thoughts. I actually prefer how the mediums play on the untreated paper. With the gesso, it works okay, but I find there's not as much movement and it's quite coarse. To be honest, everything performed a lot better than I thought it would. There's plenty of movement with the watercolour. The pencils, I think because there's lots of tooth, you could actually probably really create some lovely coloured effects, which we will do. Alcohol markers, that really surprised me. We have actually managed to get a decent blend there with the watercolours. Normally I say with watercolours you need a really super smooth card, but that's actually blended really well. I mean, I'm maybe not going to get my best alcohol colouring out of this book, but I'm going to get pretty good. And paint markers. The only thing with the alcohol markers is they did bleed through, but that is to be expected of everything. So as I create, I may sort of keep these back pages for more references as I maybe get new supplies or maybe want to test out pens, but I have to say with how this is performed, I'm feeling a lot more confident. So I'm just going to let these pages dry and then we will play for real. One thing I have just noticed is the pencil here has smudged slightly. I don't know if you're going to be able to, I don't know why I had to say that in a slight Irish accent. It's because my father-in-law says slightly all the time. But it's just smudged slightly. So I'm going to grab this canvas varnish. I can link to this in the description box below, as I will do with nearly everything else that I'm able to use, and I'm just going to give that a wee spray just to finish it. So I'm going to start at page 1 of this journal. This is not something I used to do in the past. I used to always sort of hop about, but I have noticed that the journals that I've actually finished, it's the journals that I've kind of gone in consecutive order with the pages. So I don't know what it is about doing that makes me finish journals, but it works for me. But do what works for you. So I decided to start off by putting some texture paste down. I just used the Pretty Gets Gritty white texture paste, and I am loading this up with lots of watercolour. We've got some Kuretake Gansy Tambi going on, and then I've sprayed it with lots of water. Now I have to say, as I have played with this over the past couple of days doing these few pages for you, I have to say that this paper takes a huge amount of abuse. It really does. It takes lots and lots of water and it doesn't damage it. I kept this page really simple actually. I have this image. This is one of the freebies from last year. I can link to that as well. Do check the description box below for all the links. And I just decided to stick that in the middle. I added a little bit more shadowing, and I'm keeping it as is because I quite like that. So as I said, I really fancy trying some colouring. Now, one thing that's really weird about working on this journal is because it's handmade paper, it is so soft. It's like sinking into a pillow or something. It's lovely, but it's quite strange when you're used to working on a harder surface. So for stamping, I just put that mat underneath, so I had it wasn't too soft for stamping, and I thought I'd experiment here with a little bit of colouring. So this is the stamp Butterfly Style, and I am going in using my Prisma pencils and just really gradually building up the colour. As I said, I do want to do a lot more pencil play in this journal because, as I said, it's got a really, I don't know what the truth of it is, but it works really well with pencils. So I think you could get some really cool sort of funky transition of colours with your pencils, but because it's a fairly new journal and I'm still getting used to it, I stuck to what I was familiar with. So we've gone for a little bit of skin tone because that I can just about manage. I'm pulling out some reds now here to do the lipstick, and you'll see these lips really start to pop as we gradually fill them in, and that again is a testimony to the paper. It's amazing for colouring on. Honestly, I'm absolutely blown away by this paper. I was expecting it to be really hard to work with. I know that I've had a journal in the past and the paper was 100% cotton, and I really struggled. I found that the paper pilled, and I struggled to get the movement I wanted, and when it used watercolours. And this paper just seems to be, every medium that I have used seems to work absolutely fine, because I have to say I just really wanted it. And you know, that way I was at the workshop and I was in the moment and I bought it because I wanted it, and it wasn't cheap. It was £38, so it was a bit of a considered purchase. And then I'm sitting there thinking, what have I done? You know, I've spent this money, and yes, the paper's beautiful, but am I ever going to use it? Because what do you actually do with handmade paper? Well, I've discovered there's a lot you can do with handmade paper, and I'm so excited to explore this further. I can see this journal fast becoming one of my favourites. There'll be a lot more to come very soon. As you can see, I decided to expand on the stamp. I just got some watercolours out and sort of painted in a sort of hairish type shape. You don't need to be an artist to do this, just anything sort of flowing from the head will work. And then I've come in with some pencils to try and add a little bit of texture in the hair. You can also see me just sort of colouring a bit more solidly in some of the shadow areas. You can see me doing that now. I'm just really building up the depth of colour in areas that would have a little bit of shadow. Now, also for some reason, despite me having had a YouTube channel for many years, and despite me having had to confess this in the last few videos, I failed to film the part where I went over with a silver marker to get those strokes and the sparkles. But that's how I finished it off. Now, it really annoyed me because what I hadn't realised when I turned the page was that I'd left one blank. Yes, and as soon as I'm wanting to go in chronological order, that bothered me. So we just had to create a third page. So I decided to use some book paper, and I also have been using quite a lot of this chocolate and marshmallow paper pad. I have to say I love this. I designed it and I was really trying hard to kind of go out with my normal colour combos, especially for designing, to give you guys a bit more variety. And I have to say, this is not probably a colour combo that I would have thought I would have naturally gravitated to, but of all the 3 paper pads I've done, I've gone through 2 of these already. Absolutely love this paper pad. So yeah, I've got lots of little strips because of the different things that I've been making. I've got lots of strips, so I had the idea with this page that I would just use all these strips up, that we would create some sort of cool background with the paper and these gorgeous soft colours. So I do all that, and then I just pop some clear gesso over it just to get it all sealed down. And then I go over it with a little bit of white gesso. I do like doing this. I quite often feel that when you start a project like this, it does look like a bunch of scrap papers that's been slapped down, and it doesn't look overly pretty. Whereas if you kind of soften the edges, it all looks like it's meant to belong together. I then come in and try and sort of emphasise the patterns that we've got there by taking some watercolour paints and these gorgeous sepia tones and adding that to the page in between the stripes, as I said, just to kind of really help them to pop. Now, this page, I struggled with this page. Oh my goodness. I have to say, if it had not been between 2 pages that I absolutely loved, I'd been quite tempted to tear them out. I mean, oh, but it's also been a lesson in if it's not right, it's not the end. If you don't like it, just keep going until you do like it. Boy, did I struggle with this. So I decided to add a little bit more gesso because some of that stuff that I'd said to you about blending it and all making it look one, that I'd got a bit lost. And also I wanted to do some stamping. And for the stamps to stand out, I needed to create a little bit of a base. Now, because of the way it was stuck down, this is where the catalogue of errors begin. Because of the way it was stuck down, there was lots of like edges that were lifting off the page and they were just bothering me. So I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to tear them and it'll just add to the texture and the variety of colours. So I then stamp in these little houses. As you can see, I've kind of got my usual sort of workboard that I use to, I think it's called a boogie board, that I use to colour on. And for some strange unknown reason, I decided to pull my pastel pencils out. I never use pastel pencils. I don't know how to use pastel pencils. I have no idea why I thought I would bring these out on a brand new journal where I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. But I was obviously just feeling it and feeling the let's do something new and different. And so I did that. And to be honest, at this stage it was okay. I was wanting a nice sepia tone. And then I moved on to this little house here. Oh, I hate this little house. Oh my goodness. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a great big brown sort of stripe. I think because of the various mediums and the various textures of paper, I just was not getting an even colour on this, and I kept going back and I kept adding more pastel. Then also I decided to add a random path going down to the other house. I don't know why. Anyway, I hated it so much that I pulled out my acrylic markers. I have to say that acrylic markers, along with crayons, are fast becoming my favourite medium. And acrylic markers cover a multitude of sins. So they've got a nice even coverage no matter what you stick them on. They go over and they're nice and opaque. So we brought out a few sepia tones of those and put them in, and then I sort of gradually pulled that over the other houses, and then I sort of pulled it out a little bit with a paintbrush as well. Gives it kind of painterly look, and the houses I am liking much better. Still not my favourite, but as I said, I was going for this chocolate and marshmallow theme, then realised I absolutely hated the path, so we blanked all of that out with gesso, and at this point I'm like, oh my word, I hate it. So I decided we'd lost quite a bit of the pink that was in the papers, so I got the Kitsch Flamingo spray because I think that was about the closest to that sort of soft pink that I had in a medium such as this. So we let that go. I tried moving it a little bit with water, which to be honest I probably should have left because it kind of moved all of those lovely patterns that we had from doing the spray, but you know, you live and learn. And then I let that dry. Then I come and get some more markers. This is when it all started coming together. I still sort of hated it, but I was trusting the process. So again, I took out some acrylic markers in these sort of soft dusky pinks, these sort of pastel yellows and some sepia browns, and I was sort of doing little bits of doodles, little bits of pattern building and layering. And I think this is what really saved this page, was the layers. Because there was a few times I'm like, yeah, it's getting there, but it's not quite right. But I just kept going with the stencil. So I've added a few more squares, added a few more roses, and the shapes sort of started building on top of shapes. And then by using these shapes, I did actually manage to connect the sort of two houses. So it did look like it flowed, but we didn't have this weird path that floated into the middle of the air. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking. Genuinely do not know what I was thinking. I pull out this sort of soft grey marker, add a few highlights. This is a very different sort of style of colouring for me. Then I was liking it a lot, but thought there was too much pink, and actually the bits that I thought was bringing it together the most was these little sort of torn pages. So I added more sentiments to kind of finish it off, and I think that kind of worked. So those are my pages for today. We've got this gorgeous mermaid one where we use texture paper and watercolour. We have the funky houses, and we have the gorgeous girl. If you love art journaling, you may want to check out this video here for more inspiration, and I will see you guys again very, very soon.